What's up, team? Welcome to Chargers Daily, where every day is a great day to talk Bolts. My name is Chris Cash, and I'm coming to you Friday, June 26th. Happy weekend to everybody. We're going to be going through the happenings from today and some viewer comments, so I appreciate everybody stopping by with the comments. And let's get into it. So the 2027 NFL Draft will be in Washington, D.C. at the National Mall. It's not really my cup of tea. You have to be, I don't know if you saw on the broadcast last year, but it was so busy that people were so far away from the stage they couldn't even see who was coming out there to get their jersey. So not my cup of tea, but if you're in the area and you want to go to the National Mall, buy you some shoes, go watch a draft. You do you. A friend of mine asked me why, when I'm talking on this, why I don't go over some of the off-the-field issues. There was a horrible incident today where an NFL player was connected to an armed robbery and a kidnapping. And the reason is because I like to look at the best in these guys. I watch football because I get to watch guys challenge themselves as a team physically to be the best that they can be. And I want to watch those players. The off the field stuff is obviously part of it because if one of our players does it, I'm going to make sure to talk about it. But as far as other players go, I'm not as much into it because I think everybody deserves a second chance until you don't, which some guys continue to break over and over again. But for now, I'm just going to stick to sports and stats and go from there. And I want to talk about the comments on yesterday's show. Awesome conversation there, team. Everybody that's coming by had some great points. And I want to touch on why I projected Thule in the $27 million range. So Shannon Daly, sup? And then 2-1 hit basically said, like, come on, man. You got to be kidding me. There's no way that we're going to be able to get a contract from him. And you're probably right. And I think that I probably shot it a little bit too low. But the reason I picked 27 million is because based on the current environment, that seemed like a median projection. And a lot of times, team, when I'm doing these stats or I'm putting stuff to you or I'm projecting or forecasting, we're going to be trying to find that middle number. So I do completely agree with you guys. I think that 27 million is likely going to be the floor if he has a good season. I think we start at 27 million and go up from there. And so I wanted to talk about the growth of the salary cap over the last few years. So in 2024, the salary cap was 255 million. This year it's 301.2 million. It's gone up $46 million in just the last 2 years. And over the last 5, it's increased by 40%. And so there is going to be a lot more opportunity to pay players. Look, by 2027, it's going to be at 323. By 2028, 328. In 2028, that's practically another premium salary for a star player. And I want to see how we use our cap space right now to get this deal done. Like, why are we not just doing it? And so I think if Thule has like a 12-plus sack season, the market's going to keep rising. So I appreciate the call out, guys. I like the back and forth on this. I love hearing you guys' opinions on it and going from there. So again, I think the 27 million may be the floor if he has another big season. I just don't want to see him take a step back or anything like that. Because if he has a bad year, I don't know what that reset would look like. Obviously, I want him to dominate. I want to pay him. Love that guy. Roy Leggett had a interesting question. He said, who is the Chargers' Deebo Samuel? And Roy, I don't know if that's a trick question, but I decided to look at who gets the most rushing opportunities for the Chargers. Well, last year we only had 6 rushes by the receivers. 2 by Trey Harris, 2 by Q, and 2 by Darius Davis. And considering, then I thought, okay, maybe this is like a physical prototype type of comparison. You know, Deebo's 6 foot 215, like a little cannonball. Couldn't really find anybody. You know, Lad's 6 foot, but he's 185. Trey and Q are bigger. So, Roy, you tell me, man. You stop by in the comments, tell me who it is, and let's go from there. He also said, how exciting is it that the Chargers get to practice with the San Francisco 49ers in August? We're going to see a lot of 49ers this year. We get them in a preseason game. We get a joint practice. And I think we even get them in the regular season. I'll vet that in a minute. But I think that that's going to be awesome because playing and being around greatness makes you better. And I know the 49ers had a somewhat disappointing year for their perspectives last year, but I still think that they are one of the better teams in the league. So I'm excited to be working with them. And fun fact, did you know that Max McCaffrey, our running backs coach, is Christian McCaffrey's brother? So you got Luke McCaffrey, the receiver, Max McCaffrey, our running backs coach, and then Christian McCaffrey. The more you know. All right, let's get into our segments today. This one's going to get me lit on fire. So pop them off in that comments. Why Brandon Aiyuk scares me. One of the biggest problems that I see when working with player projections and anything with data is that NFL fans have a name worship problem. And what name worship means is that once somebody does something one time, we put them into this category, and all of a sudden they're going to be in that category all the time. Q had it from his rookie season, and he still doesn't get the amount of respect that he deserves because everyone's comparing him to that rookie season. But there are a lot of these guys that stay in the league for a long time that people fall in love with. And Brandon Aiyuk is one of those people. I know that Brandon Aiyuk was really good. 2023, 1,342 receiving yards. That's an all-pro. That's second team all-pro. Pretty good. But since then, he's torn his ACL, MCL, and meniscus in October 2024. He hasn't played a meaningful NFL game in nearly 2 years. He had an awful public contract dispute with San Francisco, and he could not have handled that more unprofessionally. And now he's doing these things where he's trying to call, like, hey, if I get released, I'm going to go sign with the Commanders on Thursday. And according to Schefter, Commanders aren't really into that. Now, that, again, that could be hearsay, but that's what we're hearing. That's what the tea leaves are saying. And so I don't want to bring him in because of the name and the brand that he once had. I'm not saying he's not a good player, but think about over the years how many of these great receivers that we loved fell off. You know, not everybody gets to go the way of Calvin Johnson. Think about Julio Jones, for example. And Julio Jones was a good dude. He was great to have in the locker room. One of the greatest wide receivers of our generation. Great locker room presence. Not a lot of character issues. And from 2014 to 2020, he had 7 straight seasons over 771 yards and 6 seasons over 1,300 yards. Now, you may forget he played for the Titans. He played for the Eagles. He bounced around a little bit in those last 3 years. And those last 3 years, he went from 434 yards to 299 yards to 74 yards. And it's these guys, Father Time is undefeated, unfortunately. And this is a guy with good locker room character. So then I started thinking about Adrian Peterson. Same situation for him, except that Adrian Peterson's situation, if you're not familiar, is that he got into some financial troubles. I believe it was because of a manager or somebody he was associated with, a business partner or something. And so he ended up playing for a lot longer, not because of the love of the game, but because of financial burden. And that's what I'm starting to worry about with Brandon Aiyuk. Is he coming back just because he wants the paycheck? Or is he coming back because he loves the game? I don't know the answer to that. But it's certainly starting to feel like with all this attention-seeking behavior that he's going for, that paycheck is priority number one. And I want people on our team that are going to listen to Harbaugh, listen to the coaches, love McDaniel, and go from there. And I don't see that with Aiyuk. And so, you know, who are some guys you think that that's overrated because they were good once? Drop that in the comments. Let me know who it is. But again, I think we're fine with that Aiyuk. I would rather just develop the young guys, man. They may not have the same physical ability and the same maybe ceiling talent, but team building is more important. We'll get on that at the last segment. All right, let's look at some stats. Got into some stats today. And the Athletic named Derwin James one of the NFL's most versatile defenders. Well, duh. Of course. Best pass rushing defensive back in football. Physical against the run. Can play man coverage. Sideline to sideline and zone. Can blitz. Cover tight ends. He's awesome. And last year, we were looking into how his usage was different from those in the past. Now, keep in mind, over the last 3 years, he's played 16 games every season. So the old Derwin James is injury prone. We can throw that out the window. But Derwin played more on the second level than he did before. And I think that likely helped some of the tread that he was putting on his body after 7 seasons. So I went back and looked in the history of the NFL. Now, over the last 3 seasons, Derwin James has 5 interceptions, 21 passes defended, 9.5 sacks, and 21 tackles for a loss. And so I dug into the numbers, and I decided, okay, for guys that have played 7 years, how many have 21 pass deflections, 21 tackles for a loss, and 9 sacks? And guess who's number 1? Derwin James has the most interceptions of players with those statistics. There were, let's see how many people were on it. There were 35 in the history of our game since 1940. That's how special this guy is. And when you start to look at the list, you've got guys like Shaq Leonard, Joe Schobert, Anthony Simmons, TJ Edwards. It's all linebackers. In fact, of those 35, only 3 of them were safeties. Antoine Winfield Jr. was one of them that I got to give a shout out to. But only 3 safeties have even hit that milestone. Derwin is in rare company, and that's what makes him different. There are great safeties. There are great slot defenders. There are great guys that can cover shifty cornerbacks. But there's no one like Derwin that can do it all. And we have to always remember that Derwin is the man. But I think we all do that, right, Chargers fam? I just got to back it up with some stats. You know, we gotta say to the people that aren't Chargers fans, hey, you don't have Derwin James on your team. You don't. All right, let's talk about team chemistry. I said chemistry. Team chemistry. And we're going to use a team that some of you older watchers and listeners will remember. And it was the 2011 Philadelphia Eagles. And I'm including this segment because fans always want the big names. You know, they want the Brandon Aiyuks, they want the Jalen Ramseys, the guys they see in the media. The familiarity of them makes it feel more connected to the NFL, and I get that. You want to watch something and feel like you're watching players that you root for. But again, I like winning, and I want a Super Bowl. And so I started going back to the 2011 Eagles. And this was Andy Reid's 13th season. That was about the time where, you know, he was taking them to the playoffs and the conference championships, and like 6 years in a row went to the conference championship. But that year, they signed Nnamdi Asomugha, which was a very good cornerback. They traded for Dominique Rodgers-Cromartie, another great cornerback. They signed Jason Babin, signed Ronnie Brown, signed Steve Smith, Colin Jenkins, and then Vince Young was the backup quarterback, and he called them the Dream Team. All these big-name players. They were 10-6 the year before, so they brought in all these big-name players, and oh man, they were going to be great, right? They finished 8-8, and they missed the playoffs for the first time in 5 years. Signing players because of their names doesn't make your team good. Your team becomes good because of chemistry, because people know their roles, because there's a culture that your coach has set. And so right now in Chargers land, I feel like coach has got it under control. I feel like McDaniel has it under control. I feel like O'Leary has it under control. And I would much rather keep that momentum that we are all getting along and there's no ruffled feathers moving through this offseason. Now, will that change at camp? Likely. But there's still other players that can give us a production that we need. We don't have to have somebody come in and just take the number one receiver away from Q. So I want to see good teams with chemistry, not big names. And while the Eagles won the offseason, there's not a Lombardi trophy for the offseason last time I checked. So I want to keep the good vibes going, team. Have a great weekend. We'll be back on Monday. Drop in the comments any fun segments or stats you want to look at. Thank you guys for stopping by. Go Bolts.